Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to another episode of the Solutions for the Soul podcast. My name is Parker Tompkins. I am a psychotherapist and clinical director at Soul Solutions. Super excited for this month's episode and super excited for the guest I have on today. I brought in an external guest, my friend and colleague, Alex. I'll let you go ahead and introduce yourself.
Hey, what's going on, everyone? My name is Alex Vigilante. I am a men's coach. I have a corporate career, but I'm also bridging the gap to be more fulfilled and aligned in my life with how I present to the world and how I help men slow down, see themselves fully, and help them live lives of fulfillment and purpose and alignment. I'm also a breathwork facilitator. I do cohort coaching as well, and I'm excited to be here. Thanks for having me.
Awesome. Yes, super excited to have you. I appreciate the work that you're doing with wellness in general, but specifically men's wellness. I think we see a lot of stigma and stereotypes that are still lingering when it comes to men's mental health, and all efforts to bridge that gap are needed.
Yeah, very much so.
Yeah, it's getting better, shifting, but still a ways to go, I would say. Would you agree?
I would agree. I think a lot of conditioning and a lot of expectations have started to unravel now that more people are speaking up and being transparent about the problems that they face.
Yeah.
But I still think we have a large way to go with how men are expected to perform in the world and how they're expected to present in the world as well. But I think if you even look at the last 15, 20 years, there's been a large progress where I feel comfortable to say, like, yo, I'm not okay sometimes, and I think that empowers other people and gives them the permission to also say, I'm not okay.
Yeah.
Now, what they do about that, that's
another story.
That's another story.
Absolutely. Yeah, for sure. I think that kind of ties us into today's episode, which won't be geared specifically to men, but in general, I think a lot of people have a little bit of a discrepancy between how powerful they think their mind and their thoughts are. And we want to really get into today the power of our mind and what we can truly harness when we increase our awareness and our mindfulness a little bit and kind of tap into the impact of our thoughts.
Yeah,
sure.
Very much so. I'm excited. Hopefully we'll get some value for the folks. Hopefully you walk away with some actions that you can take to help you feel more confident in how you walk through life. I mean, today's world is noisier than it's ever been. There's more inputs. There's more stimulus. From the time we wake up to the time we go to bed, we're constantly barraged by ideas and opinions and information, and we never have the opportunity just to slow down and be with ourselves.
Yeah.
So hopefully by the end of today's pod, you guys will have the chance to do that a little bit more.
Yeah, that's the plan for sure. So when we think about the power of our mind, and our mind, just like anything else that has kind of controls and settings, our mindset is settings of our mind. And when you think about settings, we have the ability to change them, to increase them, decrease them. The same goes for our mind and our thoughts and the input, the internal dialogue that we have. So, Alex, I know mindset and just the power of the mind are something that you incorporate a lot into your work with individuals and your teachings. When I say kind of power of our mind, what's the first and most important kind of thing that comes to mind for you regarding that?
I think I'll say this, you are not your thoughts. You are the hearer of your thoughts.
Yeah.
You are the awareness that lives between your thought and you being aware of the thought that's happening. And I know that might sound a little bit crazy to say out loud.
Yeah.
But
break it down for the listener. Break it down for the listener.
So I think it's your ego coming alive sometimes when you see someone and you say that person is older or younger, richer or poorer, healthier or unhealthier, this or that. That's a representation of your ego judging that person, not necessarily like your true self. And if you can recognize that you're thinking that, you can also say, that's not true. Or you can say, that's not me. It's a reflection of my ego judging someone. So that's like a first angle. The other thing I would think about is if you can recognize that, if you can be aware of your thoughts, that proves that you are not your thoughts in the first place. And if you can not be your thoughts, then you can also ensure that you are thinking stronger and better and more important and beneficial thoughts at times when you need it.
Yeah.
And I think that's a lot of self-talk that a lot of people have. Oh, I'm not a morning person. Well, if you say you're not a morning person, you ain't gonna be a morning person.
Absolutely.
Yeah. If you say, oh, I can never do that, you can never do that. And I think it's easy for us to get in this thought process where, our thoughts become our behaviors become our actions become our identity, and then it becomes who we are as a person. So that's why I say a lot with like stems back to your thoughts. And if you can separate yourself from your thoughts, you can also put more important, powerful, and beneficial thoughts versus negative self-talk and negative thoughts in the first place.
Yeah. I think the whole concept of you are not your thoughts is so big, and it shows up a lot in the therapy work that I do with clients, because I think it's hard for people to understand. When you say it initially, there's a lot of, well, what do you mean? It's my thoughts, they're in my brain, it's what I'm thinking. And yes, there's truth to that, but I want people to think about thoughts more as, kind of carriers of information. It's not your identity. Even thinking about soul solutions, our whole philosophy is soul as in self. That doesn't just mean the thoughts or the things that you're speaking to us. When speaking about to yourself, when you think about self, it's bigger than thoughts. We're not these narratives that we absorb and consume.
Yeah.
And I think the more distance people can start to create between self and thought can really, really go a long way.
Yeah, totally. And without getting too deep into it, but like your thoughts typically come from like different parts of your being. Like we've talked about IFS and Richard Schwartz and parts work. Hit this mic at least 3 more times.
That's okay. I'll count.
Yeah, that's one.
Yeah.
But like we have parts of ourselves that protect us from being hurt. We have parts of ourselves that keep us from doing things that are challenging to us, that make us feel insecure, that make us uncomfortable. So those thoughts tell us that we can't do things because they're going to push us out of our comfort zone. Or those thoughts are actually really helpful. As you think about how we evolved, hey, that's a scary noise. We should avoid that scary noise so we don't get hurt. But the difference is that our nervous systems don't know the difference between a scary noise and something that's actually going to help us grow. And we conflate the two of those together. And then we don't ever do the things that are going to challenge us and push us to grow because we're scared of doing it. And that's a representation of the thoughts telling us that the thing that we want to do is harder or bigger or more challenging than it actually is.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
I think I've talked maybe in previous episodes, but our brain recognizes things, and it's well intended. It thinks it's protecting us or defending us or, preventing us from falling in these familiar patterns. But like you said, our brain doesn't always separate a perceived threat from an actual threat or different things like that. So it's kind of up to the individual to be able to have that mindfulness and self-awareness to say, this is something that I am, taking in as a narrative because of XYZ experiences. How true and real is that to me right now?
Yeah.
And it does take mindfulness. I think there's a lot of almost DBT, dialectical things that go into it, because you have to first have the awareness that these thoughts are not the exact same thing as you. They're driving things, but they're not you.
You said something a couple of weeks ago. We were at the lunch, and you said like the mind. Even you said today, the mindset is settings of your mind. And I think there's such power in recognizing like you're not your thoughts, but if you can spend time thinking about your thoughts, and if you can examine your thoughts, you can begin to unravel how they've had boundaries about what you can accomplish, how they continue to kind of dominate the way you walk through life. Where, hey, why do I think this? Even just asking that. Okay, I think this because I'm scared. Why am I scared? And you just go down the rabbit hole and intentionally work through yourself. Easier said than done.
Sure. It takes practice.
It takes practice. It takes intentionality. But I believe it all starts with being aware of the fact that you're not your thoughts.
Yeah. And I know we briefly touched on this. I would argue that this expands to feelings as well, where we're not our thoughts or our feelings. Again, I don't want to at all invalidate thoughts or feelings, because they're very valuable information holders, I'm going to keep saying, or teachers. I would encourage people to look at feelings a little bit more like teachers, a visitor kind of passing through. This is now telling me something about myself. This is not myself. And we don't do a great job of this inherently. As people, we say, I am angry, I am sad, I am mad, I am scared. That's not fully accurate. Really, the language could be, I am feeling angry, I have anger, I have fear. But when we put this language that is very, definitive, and kind of we put our identity in it, I think that's where people give a little bit more power than needed to their thoughts and feelings.
I think first, really well said. The English language doesn't always do the best job. For us to say like, I'm angry. No, you just are. You're Parker. I'm Alex.
Yeah.
Even behind that, that's just a label. That's just a name.
True.
That's another pod. Good dovetail on that
deep,
one.
But real.
But right, like you are not angry. You are not sad. You are not, and it's not to invalidate, but it's to
Yeah.
separate so that you can name the feeling and understand what is that feeling trying to teach me or help me or keep me from.
Hmm.
Um, it's not just naming it to taming it, but you could build separation to say that I'm not that feeling.
Yeah.
And
It's something I'm
it's
experiencing,
something I'm
not something I
experiencing.
am.
Right. And when you recognize that, you can also choose, and this is again, deep work, intentionality, but if you can be upset for no reason, you can be happy for no reason.
Hmm.
How many people have woken up the wrong side of the bed
Yep.
and the rest of their day sucks? It's like,
Yeah.
yeah, again, a lot of intentionality, a lot of awareness, but if you can choose to be upset, you can choose to be happy too. And
Hmm.
by, I think, just building separation between those is a really, really big first step.
Yeah. And I think it goes understated, like what you think is gonna be what it is.
Yeah.
And you used an example earlier, but if I think, I'm not good enough for something or this is gonna annoy me, 100% it is, because you're already kind of pre-deciding what it is. And these thoughts have power, even
Yeah.
though I feel like we're trying to encourage the separation, which is needed, but it doesn't mean that they're worthless, right? Like they
Right.
have a lot of power and they have a lot of impact. When we can harness some control over that, I mean, it can change everything. I know. Sorry, you were
No, no,
saying.
no. I think perspective is tough to find in the moment. I think
Mm-hmm.
it's really difficult to remove yourself from the situation and say, like, this is part of a larger purpose. This is part of a larger lesson that I'm meant to learn. This is part of a larger
Mm-hmm.
experience. But in the moment, it's so hard to detach ourselves from that because we become so attached to the outcome of how something should be. We create
Yes.
narratives. We can create these preconceived notions, these stories in our head, which where they come from our thoughts.
Mm.
And because we become so attached to those outcomes, when those outcomes don't happen, that is where we suffer.
Yeah.
And I feel like being able to separate those two and build space between those, again, we're saying this so easily, but like that's the work, that's the
Yeah.
practice. That's why you speak with someone. That's why you work with a coach. That's why you go and talk to someone who can hold you, and feel you and
Mm-hmm.
work with you. And I think that's a lot of the work and why it's so important.
Yeah. We don't have the innate ability to do that.
Right.
We don't, or we kind of do deep in there,
Yeah.
but you really have to
To unravel, there's a lot of layers.
Yeah, for sure. And it is. And it's something, for listeners and potential clients, it is something that people have to be willing to explore because we get a lot of our identity and our sense of worth and everything from thoughts and these narratives. And we have to be able to kind of look at how it's showing up in our daily life, I think,
Yeah.
for sure.
Yeah.
I know I've worked with clients who we'll talk about affirmations and positivity, and that can work for some, doesn't work for everybody. But if you give me a given scenario and let me know your thoughts about it, your thoughts are going to directly impact your feelings. That's, classic CBT. Thoughts impact how you feel about it. And then that's going to impact how you act.
Yeah.
So if that thought can be altered from, I'm scared I'm going to fail, to what if I succeed? Something as simple as that. The feelings that are associated with that change. I'm now going from, standoffish, not feeling confident, a little insecure, to maybe hopeful, excited, all these things, but it's directly connected to the thought all the time.
Have you ever heard the saying, I'm going to screw it up because I always get it. I always say it the way I'm supposed to say it the second time, not the first time.
We'll get a little blooper out of it.
Yeah, we might get a little, but I'll believe it when I see it. Or no, I'll see it when I believe it.
Okay. Which
It's
one
like,
is it?
No, I believe it, so I will see it.
Mm.
Right? So it's like,
Mm-hmm.
and I think a lot of this goes back into, if we think about, not to get too deep on here, and I don't always have the best words to describe things, and sometimes I know concepts and understand concepts, but being able to communicate them in ways that are like easy to digest is difficult. But it goes back to like the observer effect, where Schrodinger's cat is both alive and dead until you open the box.
Say a little more for those who wouldn't know what that is.
So Schrodinger did this thought experiment. It was kind of like proving the idea of quantum physics is that an particle can be in two states and the observer directly affects the state that it is.
Mm.
So his concept is there's a cat in a box. And is the cat dead or is it alive? Well, if you open the box and it's alive, then it was alive. If you open the box and it was dead, it was dead.
Mm.
But the observer influences the response. So it's how we approach in the world and how we present in the world goes back to the observer effect. So if we think that the world is annoying, it's frustrating, it's life's a bitch, and then you die.
Yeah.
Well, life is going to be that.
Yeah.
But if and it's easy to find those things. It's easy to find reasons to be upset. There's a reason to find things to be negative. There is a lot of negativity in the world. There's a lot of bad things happening. But there's also a lot of really beautiful things too. And if you ground yourself in the reality that you can control and choose the good, then you will continue to see good. It's a direct result of what you present, and how you observe the world is how the world is going to come back to you.
Yeah, absolutely. I know what you mean. I like that example. I think it even, another example that's coming to my mind, and I heard this somewhere, maybe in another podcast, but it's thinking about the messages that we even get from the outside media, which is going to be a nice caveat into our next point. But think about healthy eating, for example, eating salads and vegetables and things like that. In a lot of ways, it has this connotation of like it's restrictive and it's not delicious and da da da. And then when we think about, an ice cream sundae or something deliciously indulgent, we're like, oh, it's so good and
Right.
it's sweet and it's yummy. That's what I want. But even that is a thought process and signals and these labels that we have put where I could decide right now that the salad is the beautiful thing and the thing that I
Yeah.
really want and my body wants. But because of the power of these kind of, narratives that have been put onto things, we often put things in this negative category just because that's what's been projected. But just like you said, you can just as easily decide and switch it to something positive with some work and some practice, and it changes the whole experience.
It governs how you see the world. It really does. Like if you see a thing to be this way, that thing will be that way.
Yeah.
And that can be in a positive or negative way. And it's hard because as we started, like there's so much noise, there's so many inputs, there's so much opinions. It's hard to realize like what is actually mine and how do I actually see things. But that is where I believe a lot of, and that may be a good dovetail into the next topic, where a lot of people can actually get value from is from retreating from consuming all of the content there is. I know we're on a podcast right now.
And you're consuming
and I'm consuming it. And so are you. And so are the folks listening. But it doesn't have to be all day. And in fact, in my opinion, it shouldn't be all day.
Yeah. I think you mentioned in the beginning, historically, this is the time. I mean, we have never had this much access to media, consumption, online shopping, staying connected to what's happening across countries, all globally. I mean, it's a lot. And while I do think that there's value in, being informed and XYZ, we were never meant to know all this. Generations before us did not have this access and this luxury, if you will, of being able to know all the time what's going on everywhere. It's a lot. And I think it's become so normalized into where just, kind of connecting to the power of our mind, we lose control over that power because there's a billion and one other things that are taking up our mind space.
Yeah.
And so being able to shift through and take a break sometimes from the constant consumption and the constant just input that we're getting all the time is a huge tool in being able to really take advantage of the power of your mind.
Yeah, think about it. If you wake up, say just 6:30, all right, morning routine, brush your teeth, go to the restroom, get in the shower. I used to be on my phone looking at Instagram, Snapchat, LinkedIn, Twitter, Facebook, Reddit, news app. That's like 5, 6, 7, 8 things I just listed in the first 15, 20 minutes of waking up.
Yeah. And then go put on the TV and now the news is on.
And then you listen to a podcast on the way to the office, and then you get to the office and you go to your landing page and you look at the news from the day, and you don't even have time with yourself. You're just immediately pushed all of the information, all of the bad shit, excuse me, that's happening around the world. And of course it's going to affect your day. So then when you go to get the sandwich at lunch and someone makes your sandwich wrong, you're already frustrated and pissed off. So then that continues to be a thing that bothers you. And then there's another thing that comes out of you and blah, blah, blah. And next thing you go home at 5 o'clock, 5:30 to your family, and your child walks through your door and they expected to see mom or dad, and you're all upset or frustrated or sad because of what happened in the beginning of the day. And I feel like if more people retreated from the consumption that we do every day, we could have more time to just be with ourselves.
Yeah. Why though? In your opinion, why is it so hard? Like, I think that people have a really tough time unplugging or turning it off, even for a little. I'm not saying delete everything and don't consume anything, but I think if you ask your average person, go half of the day, go 6 hours without being on your phone, on social media, like people really struggle with that. How? Why?
I think in its most insidious form, it's addictive, and that these big tech companies did it on purpose.
Mm-hmm.
The verb of scrolling
Yeah.
is now a thing that is associated with your thumb. It wasn't around 15 years ago.
Yeah.
Like what does it say,
Scrolling.
right?
That's not a thing.
No.
That's just,
We would
wow.
scroll on the computer, the mouse
Yeah.
wall, but like you would scroll a web page or you would scroll to the Google results.
Mm-hmm.
But like you literally scroll. I need phone time. So we've rewired how our brains operate in less than 15 years.
Yeah.
And what does it say when the single most important and technologically advancement has also been the most detrimental in the smartphone?
Mm-hmm.
Like
Absolutely.
it, these big tech companies, they don't let their kids on the tech that they create.
Yeah.
And there's a really great book I would recommend for the listeners called The Anxious Generation by Jonathan Haidt and Hiddt. And he talks about how in 2010 to 2015, the rates of depression, of anxiety, of suicidal thoughts, of loneliness amongst adolescents increased exponentially because this was the first time that kids grew up with technology.
Yeah.
So I'm 33. I turned 33 next month. I remember not having a smartphone. I
Right.
remember not having access to the internet all day long.
Mm-hmm.
Remember not having all social media. I grew up without it and then had it.
Yeah.
A lot of folks growing up in these day and age
Have it.
have it.
Always.
And that's just how they operate. And unfortunately, we've become so focused on creating safety in the physical world, but we've let folks just go wild in the online world.
Mm-hmm.
And that becomes an addictive pool.
Mm-hmm.
So I would say it was done intentionally from the tech companies, but I also think like it's hardwired into how we operate now with like it's our attention, and like we feel like that's how we connect with the world because we have to know, and if we don't, we're going to miss out.
I agree. I think the addictive nature of it, I think, is really something to speak on, because you're right. It's done intentionally. It's done to keep us there, keep us consuming. I think too, from a therapy perspective, I work with a lot of clients who I believe do a lot of these things out of also patterns of avoidance. Like, I don't have to really pay attention to
strong.
what I'm feeling and doing if I can just look at what the rest of the world has going on all the time. And I think we use it as a way of distracting from real self, real life, real us.
Yeah.
And it's just become so habitual that it's easy. If I'm feeling a little sad, maybe I can just watch a video about something else, connect with a friend on social media. It's a very quick way to say, I don't have to deal with this right now.
Even in the last 30 seconds, my phone lit up 3 times, and I'm going to put it away so that it doesn't continue to distract me. I mean, boom, there it is.
Yeah.
Distraction, but I really like what you said about the avoidance, because a lot of the work that I do with men is looking inward and slowing down. And men and women, we perform such cognitive gymnastics in our head, and we tell ourselves such stories, which kind of goes back to the first concept of the thought. But because of that, it is easier to avoid, numb, distract, delay dealing with the things that we have to deal with, and the phone is the easiest way to do that.
Definitely.
Whether it's YouTube, Instagram. I mean, gosh, I'm a big YouTube guy.
Yeah. Yeah.
Sometimes I need to just put that down.
What are you avoiding, Alex? Just kidding.
How much time we got?
All right. But it is. And I think too, that's part of, like we said with the first thought, people don't know now in this all-consuming world how to unplug and how to ground themselves, and people are not comfortable sitting with their feelings, which is it's not comfortable.
Yeah.
It's not comfortable at all. It's more comfortable to watch a funny video than to be like, oh, I'm in this funk, I've been sad, how can I get out? That is where the hard work happens. And that's why therapy, coaching, things like that are there as tools to help you be able to slow down that nervous system and be able to spend some time away from the constant information.
Yeah, ignoring a problem doesn't make it go away.
No, in fact, it's gonna
I'll make it worse.
Yeah, and it's just these things that we feel. I think it's important for people to understand these thoughts and feelings. They're coming up because they want you to acknowledge something. It's almost like a little alarm bell in your body, like, hey, this is going on, like, please pay attention. Right. And we don't. We often turn away from that, but it's there for a reason.
I wish that was communicated more, and I'm really proud of the work that you do to help your clients get to that place, because what a profound realization it is that human beings are the ones that know our own existence. We have imagination, and that is a divine opportunity for us.
Yeah, it's huge.
And because of that, we also have the ability to feel feelings, right? Like the house cat doesn't know that he exists or she exists. He's just purring his way, making bread,
Yeah.
But we know that eventually our existence is going to cease one day. So because of that, when we have feelings of stress or anxiety or depression or isolation or loneliness, like these are signals from our body to tell us something. And if our brain just continues to ignore them, we're going to continue to have the same problem. It kind of creates this vicious cycle where we get down into a malaise because we're not listening to our body. And that's one of I guess one of my strongest held beliefs is that, now look, I recognize that there are legitimate, diagnosable times where, there are things that need clinical help. But I also think that sometimes anxiety is telling you to do something, and it's a signal for you to listen to. And I wish more people would recognize that because you are free to do, but you're not doing, that's where a lot of like that personal existential anxiety comes
Yes.
from.
Say that again. Because you're free to do. I'm like, you say it again. I'm saying it again. But
because you are free to do something, but you're not doing it,
yes.
creates a like internal bout of anxiety. Like, I was just gonna finish this thought one second.
Oh.
Like think about it like a prisoner. If a prisoner in a cell, was that where
I
you were
was
gonna
gonna
go?
say that
Come on.
with the bars and they're here,
Yeah.
but here and here, no. I was
Yeah.
literally gonna say.
Go ahead, please.
Well, it's an analogy, and I recently kind of came to this, and I brought it into some session. I love what you said. We have this power to make change and to make decisions, but we so often don't. So picture a prisoner. Picture yourself as the prisoner, and we're in this jail cell, and your hands are on the bars, and you're shaking, and you're like, "Let me out of here." Maybe there's 4 bars in front of you. On each side of the bars, there's nothing. But we keep ourselves trapped by this illusion. There I go. One for me.
That's 2.
By this illusion of stuckness, of anxiety, of, well, this is just what it is, and I can't do anything about it. And you can. The issue is it might be hard.
Yeah.
But it's also hard to stay trapped behind an imaginary wall that isn't really real. So choose your hard,
Are you familiar with the chicken and the eagle story?
I don't think so.
So an eagle was born in a chicken coop and lives its whole life thinking it's a chicken. Clucks around, pecks at the ground, never flies more than a few feet in the air. And one day it looks overhead and sees an eagle soaring over. And the eagle looks over to the chicken next to him and says, "What's that?" The chicken says, "That is an eagle, the most majestic and beautiful and strong bird in the world." And the eagle says, "Why don't we be like that?" And the chicken says, "Because we're chickens." So the concept of the cage doesn't actually exist.
Yeah.
That chicken or that eagle lived its entire life thinking it was a chicken.
And it could have
thought it was a
anytime.
chicken.
Yeah.
But it wasn't. It was an eagle.
Yes. Well.
Right. So I think that's the problem, is like we think these cages exist. And one thing I've learned, and where I help a lot of men recognize, is like almost everything you want is right on the opposite end of fear. And that fear holds you back from fulfillment and alignment. But if you can push past that, man, that fear, and I think I heard this in a podcast, so I forget where it is, but this is not my original thought. Nothing's original. We all just steal and copy from other people.
Honestly.
But the ocean of fear is an inch deep and a mile wide, meaning once you step in, you're good. You're not going to drown. You're not going to fall over. You can walk through that. But there's a lot of fear out ahead of you.
Yeah,
but
for sure.
Everything that you want is right on the opposite end of fear.
Yeah. I think people are so fearful of change because in so many ways change is directly tied to a loss of some kind,
True.
Whether it's a loss of some ego and pride that you had to get through, whether it's a loss of a relationship sometimes where there's fulfillment on the other side. There is typically loss associated with change, but sometimes we lose things that we need to lose.
Shedding. Yeah.
Yeah,
You need
exactly.
to, right? Like in order for you to step into this new person, first of all, that person was within you the whole time, right? Like the sculptor says, "Oh, I didn't sculpt anything. I just removed layers until what was there was meant to be." And I feel like that's a good analogy for us as we
with clay
Yeah,
sculpting.
right.
Yeah.
right.
Okay. I like that.
And like parts of you have to die. Like your ego has to die in order for you to step into this new part of your being. And that's a lot of like like when I think about being a growth catalyst for others, personal growth and like growing, whether it's in your abilities, whether it's wanting to, step into this new way of life, you have to live different.
Yeah.
Right. But like, you have to think different, but that was still within you the whole time. You
Right.
just have to get out of your own way.
Yeah. That's our whole literally philosophy at Soul Solutions too. Like this is, and it kind of makes me think about as a therapist, I'm not the holder of the answers. I have a lot of clients who I've noticed, not a lot, but some clients who will ask me very directly, like my opinion.
Right.
What do you think about this? Or even what would you do? Or which choice should I make? And it's not my space. It's not my role to say, but more so letting you know that you have the answers you have. And if you don't have the answers, you have the tools to develop the answers, and we just have to get to them,
Why do you think people ask you for your opinion?
If I'm being honest, I think that people are fearful.
Yeah.
It takes pressure off. So if I make a decision, you don't have to worry about making the wrong decision. I think that's one thing. And I think people really do feel that people lack confidence in this like sense of soul and sense of self, that they do have the knowledge and information and experiences to know what they need.
Yeah.
And I think the barriers are so external, right? Like we typically are a product of the problem, not the problem, if that makes sense. We have all these external experiences that are telling us different things. And really, if we can kind of focus inward on self, everything that we need, we have acquired or we have innately or whatever the case.
Yes. Yeah.
So I think people just shy away from that because it's not normal yet, and people have to be, like we said, it literally takes practice to get into this mindset of separating from your thoughts, figuring out what I need. I do a lot of value exploration, like what is really important to you, and is what you're telling me that's important to you, are you showing that in your life? I know there's another analogy that I've heard maybe about if an alien came down to Earth and they couldn't hear, there was no language, like they couldn't hear you, you couldn't communicate with them, but they could just learn about you from observing. Would they know what's important to you just based on what you do only, not what you're saying? Because we can say all day, family is important to me, or honesty is important to me, or being a good da-da-da. But are you showing that in your day-to-day?
Oh, I really like that. That's the first time I've heard about that. And now I'm thinking about like, well, I do exercise every day. I do go outside every day.
Yeah.
I do spend time with my family.
Yeah. Okay, so you're touching on something I wanted to ask. In what we're talking about right now, this consumption and the need to slow down, how can we help viewers understand like some exercises and grounding, and maybe an opportunity to highlight the work you do too with breath work, because I know that's powerful. I do want to say, and I'll be the first to admit, breath work in the way that you do it, that I'm familiar with, is a very different level and more effective. If I'm in a therapy session and I tell someone, take a deep breath, it's not effective for everybody. But I even think that is more of a mental barrier of, well, a deep breath's not going to fix my problems, things like that. But there is a lot of real legitimacy in grounding yourself and the power of your breath. Will you say a little about that?
Yeah, I'm happy to. Just to start, you can go weeks without food. You can go days without water. You can go minutes, seconds without breath. So, the saying breath is life is truly one of the most accurate statements.
Yeah.
And across cultures, we're talking the Taoists called it chi. The Hindus called it prana. The Sufis said it was a connection to God. The concept of breath work and using the breath to either slow down or create a non-ordinary or altered state of consciousness is incredibly powerful and incredibly healing. But that's like a whole other area that we might not even get into today.
Yeah.
But when you say take a deep breath, you're doing some things that you're physiologically changing your body, right? Like, as an example, really quickly, your autonomic nervous system, your parasympathetic and your sympathetic nervous system is connected to different parts of your lungs. So firstly, becoming aware of how you breathe and conscious of how you breathe. A lot of us breathe in through the mouth in short, choppy breaths. If I were to scare you, you would go like this. See how my chest raised? See how my, everything went up, tensed up. And I breathed in through my mouth. The mouth is for eating, not for breathing, people. Imagine if we tried to eat through our nose.
Oh, yeah.
Right?
Would
So
not work.
the sympathetic nervous system is connected to the top of your lungs. When you breathe through your mouth, you enact the top of your lungs. So by taking a deep breath in through the nose, bringing the breath all the way down, using the diaphragm to draw that breath down to the bottom of your lungs, you are actually activating the parasympathetic nervous system. Now, the parasympathetic nervous system is your rest and digest. It's when you're calm, centered. It's what your true self loves. The sympathetic nervous system also has its values, right? Feel-good sensations, also activating you to fight or flight if you need to, live in that state. But the problem is we live our days in a fight or flight state. And these micro stressors that we talked about previously that we can't distinguish keep us in this fight or flight state. So by taking a deep breath, we're literally using our physiology to help us calm. And we can also slow our breath. So if you want to do an example really quick, we can do what is called a coherent breath. So if the listeners are listening in, what I'd ask you to do is close your eyes. Exhale all of the air from your mouth and breathe in through your nose. Inhale, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Exhale, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Inhale, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Exhale, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Inhale, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Exhale, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6.
I literally feel relaxed.
Yeah.
I have to stop you because I'm gonna rest.
I was gonna.
It's real.
Yeah.
And because it's connected to this sense of grounding and calm, like you said, we're able to shift the focus away from the noisy thoughts and really dial into what's happening.
Yeah.
Physiologically. I think it's huge.
Yeah. And there's a whole other different ways. There's Tummo breathing. There's Wim Hof style. You guys are probably familiar with Wim Hof. There's ways to act. Wim Hof.
Who's familiar with that?
The listeners might be. Are you familiar with him?
No.
Okay. You got to look up Wim Hof. He's known as the Iceman.
Okay.
He's been able to be in. It's funny. People call it Wim Hof breathing. It's been around for millennia, but we did it when the breathwork workshop, where it's a series of hyperventilated breaths to decrease the CO2 in your body, increase the oxygen, and help the gaseous exchange in your lungs. It actually activates hormesis because you're putting your body into a sympathetic state on purpose and challenging your body. So it actually is going to boost your immune system. But it's a series of hyperventilated breaths, and then you hold your breath. And then you exhale with a om, and that om connects to your vagus nerve. And your brain gets like 80% of the signals from its vagus nerve. And the vagus nerve is able to tell your brain, hey, I'm okay. And that humming noise is able to bring you back down. So I could go on and on about the different types of breath work and the activating, the relaxing techniques, but something you can do daily is literally go to YouTube and look up a 15-minute breath workflow. It doesn't have to be anything crazy, but just taking time for yourself that's not consuming, but just being with your breath and grounding yourself. Let thoughts come in and out. When they come in, hey, just return back to your breath, but slowing your breathing, slowing the pace of consumption, slowing the thoughts that come into your brain, and just slowing down in general.
Slowing down, yeah. And finding what works for you, right? Like for somebody, I know for me, and you mentioned earlier, but going outside is gonna do it for me. Grounding yourself, literally, you hear all the time, put your feet in the grass, and I think it's so real, but it's just a moment away from the consumption, the media. This also doesn't have to be something that is taking place for an hour, 2 hours.
Right.
If you have 15 minutes, like you said, utilize that to reset and to pay attention to yourself and not yourself in the context of everything else, because at the end of the day, it's you. Everything could disappear, the internet could shut down tomorrow, whatever the case is, and you're still going to be here with your thoughts.
Go hug a tree.
Yeah, something.
Do it and see how you feel.
Yeah, have you done that?
Yes.
I'm already done.
There's a tree in my backyard.
Yeah. Okay. Wow. So speaking of trees and outside, I think an analogy that Alex and I spoke about when we were planning for this podcast, thinking about the mind as a garden. And I really love this idea because it speaks to the nature with which whatever we cultivate is what's going to thrive. That is astonishingly true in a garden. You know, if we water properly and fertilize and the right amount of sun, things will thrive. The exact same thing happens in our thoughts. And I think it's fair to say that we all have some positive and some negative thoughts that exist,
Yeah,
right?
no
Helpful,
doubt.
harmful, all the time. If you feed and pour in to the negative thoughts more than the positive, they will grow
Mm.
and they will cultivate, and that will become your experience. The same applies vice versa. We all have both, but the one that you feed into more is going to be more prevalent and therefore shape your experiences.
Yeah, be the gardener of your mind. I think so. There's a great book by James Allen, As a Man Thinketh. I would definitely recommend it. I think it was written in the turn of the century, early 1900s. So a little bit of an old English. So I know people don't talk like that these days, but the thoughts and what he talks about are, I think, 1903, 1903, 1904. Anyway, point being is that's where, we talked about an analogy and where he says like, hey, what is in that garden is going to grow, right? Like regardless. But weed seeds, bad seeds are going to grow unless you cultivate and put good seeds in. And that's the act that we talked about of like being conscious of your thoughts and building awareness and putting positive thoughts in versus letting negative thoughts grow. And I think that, I mean, you said it so well. I wouldn't add anything else more than that other than be the gardener of your mind and ensure that you're cultivating positive, beautiful, strong vegetables, flowers, growth versus letting weed seeds and bad things grow, because that garden is going to grow.
Yeah.
Whether you cultivate it or whether you don't. And I think being the gardener of your brain and your mind is important.
Yeah, absolutely. I agree. I also think it takes that first ability to recognize, like, what are my thoughts harmful? Are my thoughts helpful? Because before we can pour into them and hopefully cultivate and grow, we have to be able to identify, like, what's the good, what's the bad, what's serving me, and what's just like the kind of extra noise. We have a lot of extra noise. And that takes me to automatic thoughts a lot, because when something happens, we have a thought about it automatically. And it's not something that we are super intentional about or conscious. We have these automatic thoughts that tend to, not for everybody, but tend to be geared more negatively.
Yeah.
Like, and that's our brain. It's our brain being in this overprotective overdrive mode where it's like, okay, let me make sure we're prepared for anything. Let me make sure nothing's going to catch us off guard. You know, we're not going to be hurt or anything. So we have these negative tendencies to perceive things in a way that isn't skewed positively. And in order to start to shift that, we have to start catching the negative thoughts, the automatic thoughts, and say, whoa, 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 like, that's the first thing my brain said. How accurate is that? How much truth is in that? And really starting to challenge and question these things that pop up. And I think where people fall short is that kind of, full circle. Whenever we have thoughts, people think that is, and it's not. There's room for it to be critiqued and challenged and changed. And I think that that's where a lot of the important work in therapy happens.
Yeah, building separation, right? Like, I'm sure all of us have been frustrated when we're driving. It's like, oh, that guy's a jerk, or that guy's an idiot. Oh, that guy might be a jerk, but he also might go rushing home to see his daughter, or he might just had a tough day too. And I think like a little bit of it is perspective and understanding, like, everyone's got their own baggage, everyone's got their own things that they're dealing with. And you never really know what someone else is going through. But also, the more automatic and the more dogma that you apply to the situations, the less favorable you are for yourself. And then that's how you just see the world as life being and then you die,
Yeah.
I didn't cuss that time, which was good.
Nice job.
Thank you. And that's that building that separation and that awareness. And just, if it's automatic to think that way, eventually through conscious interruption, pattern interruption, building stimulus between, or building space between stimulus and response, eventually the opposite will be true and automatic as well, where you can see things as the larger picture and not just how they are in the moment. And the stories that you tell yourself, so you can begin to challenge and question the stories that you tell yourself.
Yeah. And our brain has to have a chance to know that. Like what you just said about it can become just as habitual as it might be for us to have automatic thoughts. It can be our natural instinct to have positive thoughts, but our brain has to almost like know that that's an option. So I work with people a lot when they have a lot of negative self-talk, or more so I would say self-doubt. Like there's a lot of, well, what if this, or I'm scared of, fear of failure, I don't think I'm good enough, XYZ. If those are the narratives that you're telling yourself, that's what your brain is going to take as
Yeah.
true. Your brain has to have a chance to see something different as true. And so there has to be the attempt where maybe you do succeed, or maybe you do receive a more positive feedback than
Yeah.
you thought you were going to. And that literally, those pieces of information are wiring your brain. Oh, okay, so there is a positive way that we can do this. There is another, outcome that wasn't this self-detrimental language
Yeah.
that we were using, but our brain has to have a chance to know that. I feel like I do similar work around distress tolerance, right? Like our brain often tells us we can't handle anything sad, or, I mean, think about a breakup, think about all these things, and we think life is over,
Yeah.
and we think
Yeah.
I'm never going to feel better again, and I'm never going to find love again, or I'm never going to be out of this funk. And until your brain sees that that's not true, that will be what it is. We have
Yeah.
to give an opportunity to say, oh, I can feel sad and it doesn't kill me, or I can have a low day or feel angry at something and still be able to, make the next day a
Yeah.
better day. We have to make those connections though, so our brain knows that it's even an option.
Yeah. So far, you have lived through the hardest thing you've ever done
We made it.
and made it.
Yeah.
So it's like you're gonna continue to have hard things happen to you, and you're gonna continue to persevere. And what's the opposite? What's the alternate? That's how I operate. I recognize not everybody is like that, but like that was one of the things that I think a lot of people are held back is the what if on the negative side, which is understandable. But that self talk and goes back to the power of the mind and the settings that you apply and the thoughts
Yeah.
that you tell yourself. Do you see a lot of people struggle with self doubt?
Tons.
Yeah.
Yeah. And a lot of time what I recognize, and this might be a whole nother subject, but power of your mind, it's this negative self-talk that people have. But a lot of times what I help people realize is that is not your voice. That was the voice of your mom, who used to be hypercritical,
No
or
doubt.
this other person that, cast judgment on you. So in recognizing our own thoughts, we also have to recognize when they're not our own thoughts and when they came from somewhere else. So
Yeah.
self-doubt, I think, is huge. And I think it's in a way, I see it as a trauma response.
Yeah.
And, all trauma isn't catastrophic, but I think that there are a lot of trauma that people experience, and it gives them this perception that I am XYZ, not enough, not capable, not competent. And self-doubt is hard to work through.
Yeah. That really resonates with me, especially as the patterns that we inherit from our parents. And as being a parent myself now, I think one of the coolest and most powerful places that I can come to is recognizing like what patterns are worth repeating and what aren't. And like, I just saw this thing the other day. A dad was talking about how his father was abusive and verbally abusive and angry at the time, and his dad's dad was verbally abusive and angry at the time. And him talking about his biggest life accomplishment is that his kids won't be, and that they won't see him
That's
being
huge.
that. So, and that's, me as a parent being very conscious and cognizant of patterns that I would like to continue versus ones that I'd like to stop. But I really love what you said there about like that voice that you're saying is often not yours. It's either a parent, or maybe you're the middle child and you were never seen. So you have a challenge with overcoming that fear of being seen or wanting to be seen. Or maybe you were the youngest and you weren't allowed to let your light shine because you would outshine your brothers and sisters. And obviously we know like our childhood impacts how we live the rest of our life.
So true.
Yeah. I just think there's such power in like understanding that and saying
It
like,
is.
hey, you're not, these stories that you tell yourself are not always yours.
Yeah. And to kind of piggyback off that, I think it also takes an awareness to be able to almost weed through and pick through. When you think about our childhood and the influences, we're all very much a product of our environment, of our family of origin, where we grew up. So a lot of clients, and when I work with younger adults, kind of early 20s, that kind of range, there's a lot of work that needs to be done around what of these family of origin values do I even still hold true? Because a lot of these ideas and narratives come from, everybody's family of origin. And then we turn into adults and there's this moment of like, oh, do I even feel that way? Or is that just what was, told to me all the time? I work with a lot of clients in a religious sense in this. I have a client right now who her whole life she's grown up very Christian, quite Orthodox Christian, and very much believed in the Bible as a rule book and things like this, church multiple times a week. And entering her adulthood, she's like experiencing a lot of conflict because she's like, I don't know if I necessarily agree with all of that, but it's been my whole life. And that does create a lot of dissonance, but it's still connected to being able to check in with yourself and look inward and say, which is which, what are the things that I've just absorbed like a sponge, and what are the things that I now actually still agree with and believe in.
It's so funny you say that, Parker. I also have a guy that I work with that left the Mormon church and was the eldest. Didn't go on his missionary. I think when they're 19 in the Mormon church, he goes to, basically got shunned, so to speak, from his family, and he carries and harbors a lot of guilt from that. He also feels that he has to constantly be the performer and the achiever and ensure that he's got all his ducks in a row all the time. And it's really interesting that you talk about like the values exercise and going back to the values. I'll bring it back to that in a second. But
go ahead.
What was a real interesting moment for me is recognizing that how the behaviors that he went through during his younger years, his adolescence, have influenced. He's almost 40 years old. He's still operating in that same way, not out of an aligned way and something that makes him, feel fulfilled and feels natural to him, but because of how he felt when he was 15, 16, 17, 18, 19. And yeah, the religious aspect, that's a tough one, especially that folks, if they, hey, did you actually ever choose this?
Right. No, seriously.
You know? And if you did, great.
Sure.
That's yours to choose. That's not my prerogative to tell you. But if you didn't, why are you acting like that? And I don't mean acting like, why are you acting like that bad behavior, but
no,
like,
I get it.
Why are you acting within those, parameters and parameters that you set for yourself?
Yeah, that's so true.
I want to come back to the, I'm taking over now.
You're fine.
I want to come back to that values assessment. I think that's one of the most underappreciated aspects of like growing as a human being is understanding like what are your actual values. And I love the concept of if an alien came down, would they be able to know based off what they see you do? But could you maybe talk to the listeners more about how you work with your clients and the concept of identifying your values and then do your actions match your values?
Yeah. Well, one, I have an actual literal exercise that it's like on your phone because everything's on the phone. I'll share it with you.
Yeah,
but
please.
It is, so it has a list of very generic values. Maybe there's somewhere between 25 and 35, I would say, just values. I mean, anything, friendship, security, stability, whatever the case. It's multi-parted. So first, a client will be prompted to essentially check yes or no. Is this important to you or not? Yes or no. So then you have your list of yeses, but then you narrow it down. I think it makes you pick your top 15 and then your top 10 and then 5.
Yeah, got you.
And people have a hard time. It's hard. It's super hard to prioritize. Like if I had to get rid of one, which one is more important to me? So we eventually get down to a top 5 kind of core values. And it's something that I write down and have the client write down. A lot of things I emphasize are values-based decision making. So when there's a crossroads or when you're at this, you have this need to make a decision, let's go back to the values now, because that shows what's really important to you, which should drive your decisions. I think we get into a lot of, we kind of talked about fear of making the wrong decision, right versus wrong. A lot of times things are not right versus wrong. There just are different options that could both be positive or negative, depending on the experience, but your values are going to be what you should look to push you in a way of a decision that needs to be made, conflict resolution, things like that.
Yeah, I really love that in the context of making decisions and conflict resolution, because I think a lot of people are living outside of their values, thinking that why is my life not working the way I'm supposed to, or why am I feeling this type of way? And I think a lot of people, I do the same, similar process, different way of getting there, but identifying like, what are my values? How do they present in the world? why are they my values? How do I
Mm.
feel when I live within my values? And am I living within my values?
Yeah. And how do I feel when I'm not?
And how do I feel when I'm not?
Yeah.
And when am I not?
Right.
And when I'm faced with situations that take me out of my values, how do I react? And how do I or respond, actually, instead of reaction? Yeah, because like you might say, and that's what I say, like you might say that you value family, but if you're working all the time,
Exactly.
how
That's
much
a
do
good
you actually
example.
value your family?
Yeah.
Or
Or I've had a lot that say, I value stability or security and are in situations that are inconsistent or unsafe and things like that, where if this is important to you, then why have you gone back to this
right,
same, whatever the case may
sure,
be. But it is. And I think there's a element of therapy that can feel, maybe people shy away in this way, that can feel almost confrontational,
mm,
because I know everyone's therapeutic style is different. I know I, as a therapist, will offer some gentle accountability.
yeah,
I'm not scared to say, well, this is what you just said, so why are we here? And I think that people need that, because we don't always do that ourselves.
yeah,
We don't always, really acknowledge when there's that discrepancy or that dissonance. And sometimes you do need another perspective to help kind of call that out a little and identify that.
yeah. I think a lot of people, first of all, I've been to therapy many times in my life, got me through really challenging times, got me through some traumatic experiences that happened the last year of my life. And one of the things that I've learned from going is that the energy that you take to those conversations, you also need to take to yourself from the accountability aspect, because like you can't just expect that that's going to like only change your life.
Oh yeah,
Like
your
you have
your
to do the
hour a
work.
week is not going to cut it.
Right. Like
Yeah,
you have to make decisions. You have to make behavior changes. You have to do the things that you're uncomfortable with
right.
doing. And it's hard. It's not easy, but
It's very
it's worth it.
necessary.
Yeah.
Yeah, and worth it. Yeah, that's a good way to put it, because it does almost unlock. It's empowering, I feel like, because when you can show yourself, dang, I do have a little bit more control in the outcome than I thought I did.
Yeah.
It is empowering, and I
Yeah.
think it's fulfilling, and it boosts confidence, and it just increases life satisfaction
Yeah.
overall.
No
For
doubt.
sure, for sure. Alex, I feel like we've talked about some great
Yes.
things. I feel like the last thing that I would want to say to the listeners and the visitors are, to reach out. At Soul Solutions, we're here and we are accepting clients and always available. If it's not therapy, find what it is for you that allows you to kind of tap into some of these ideas. Hopefully some of this resonated. We definitely, I think, as the professionals in this field, whether it's a licensed clinician, whether it's a life coach, whether it's whatever, we're here because we want to help people uncover some of these tools. We recognize everyone doesn't have access or opportunity to think about things in these ways, and I think it's important for everyone to be able to do so if chosen. How are you feeling? Do you have any closing remarks or any hot takes you want to leave the listeners with?
I have two things.
Okay.
If you were at a crossroads in life, if you're at a fork in the road and you're confused about what to go, what to do, how to live your life, these two questions have single-handedly changed the course of my life. And it goes back to your values assessment, but they're simple. My challenge would be spend 10 minutes a day, 15 minutes a day for 2 weeks just thinking about these two questions. Set a timer on your phone. Don't look at your phone. Don't look at the internet. Don't look at anything. Once that timer goes off, move on with your day. But what do you love to do? And how can you spend more time doing it? At first, you're going to get, oh, I love coffee. Of course you do. Who doesn't love coffee?
Right.
Or I love music. And that might be something you love. But like truly push past some of the first things that come to mind and really come back to like, how do you feel? And when you do know what you love to do, and when you can identify how you can spend more time doing it, pursue that relentlessly. And let that be the majority of your day. And if it's not the majority of your day, we'd go back to the values and the decisions that you have to make and the changes to reflect. Because ultimately, if you do what you love to do, what is the result of that is being happy. And what's the point of life, in my opinion, is being happy.
Yeah.
So,
Can I ask a question?
Totally.
What would you say to somebody that said, well, I love to travel or hang out at the beach or spend time with my friends, but I have a busy life. I have to work and I have responsibilities and I can't just make more time to do that.
Okay. First, I would say, do you actually love them? Or do you love the feeling that you get from them? And can you replicate that feeling in other ways?
Mm-hmm.
That would be an avenue, a trailhead, and it would be a lot more conversing about what is it about the thing that you love to do.
Yeah.
Because like traveling is a thing you do, but it's the experiences that you get on the other end of the travel. It's the
Right.
community. It's the opportunity to relax and to let your hair down and to experience new cultures, to grow, to be intellectually stimulated.
You can replicate that.
Right. So you can replicate that in other ways. Also, if and that truly is something you love to do you have a lifestyle that supports the things that you love to do? And that's the delta. Like that's the whole importance of that exercise is getting a lifestyle that reinforces the things that you love to do, because ultimately if you're not doing the things that you truly love to do, you're going to continue to feel resentful about the life that you're leading.
Mm-hmm.
That's another avenue, I would say.
Mm-hmm.
And how can you spend more time doing it is a challenge.
Yeah.
And that's where, you have to be really candid with yourself and sit yourself down in the mirror and say, okay, it might mean I have to say no to more things.
Mm-hmm.
Because I want to save up to do more travels, or I want to do more experiences, or I want to read more books, which means I got to put down Netflix.
Mm-hmm.
I might have to get up earlier. I might have to go to bed earlier. Or I might have to, like there's a variety of ways to get there.
Yeah.
But the whole point being is like, if you do more of what you love to do, you will be come closer and closer to a flow state where those things feel less and less like work and effort and more just like aligned to like who you are and how you walk through life.
Yeah. I think it's amazing too how many, and I know we could get into this, but how many people don't even know that.
Yeah.
I've been struck by a few clients where I'll say, we're getting into the daily stressors, work, family. I have one in my mind in particular, and I said, well, what do you like to do? Like, if you had a free day, what would you do? What do you do for fun? When's the last time you had fun? I mean, she could not answer.
Yeah.
And that's the reality, because it goes back to the consumption and just all the responsibilities, and we're pulled in a million directions. But it is important to know what you love and use that to your advantage and use that for a more fulfilling life, because it's there. We all have things that we love and care to do.
Yeah.
That's
and
real.
maybe it's music production.
Right.
It's like, all right, well, like, are you willing to put, and this is where I start sounding like a motivational speaker, but like, are you willing to put 5 years of work into it?
Right.
Like, are you willing
This
to
needs
like
time.
do the thing? Because like, it's different for every person. It might not happen right away. It might happen right away. Who am I to say? But like, if you love to do it,
It should be okay.
it should be good.
Yeah, that's real.
Yeah.
Did you say one of your two things that you wanted to finish with, or was that two of two?
I think that was one of two.
Yeah.
I don't even remember what the second one was.
Was it a hot take?
Was it a hot take? Oh.
Mm-hmm.
That might be episode number 2.
Episode 2, hot take coming back. Okay.
If you'll have me again.
That's fair. Well, thank you so much, for real. I think that the conversations that we had were very, very stimulating, very riveting. I hope this speaks to somebody, because our mind is so much more powerful than we give credit for or than we acknowledge. And the more that you can use it to your advantage, you're really in a good spot.
Yeah.
So
thank you for having me, Parker. Thank
Absolutely.
you for listening and watching. Is this on YouTube?
Mm-hmm.
Is this? Oh, okay.
Sure will.
So,
I'll send it to
shout out
you
YouTube.
All right, y'all. Thank you so much for tuning in. Have a great rest of your day, morning, evening, wherever you are. And we'll be back next month for another episode, Solutions for the Soul podcast.
Thank you.
See you then.